And we're live. Thank you very much for joining us for another episode of One Take because life has no rehearsals. Today, I am absolutely thrilled to bring Tony Hollingsworth. I think I've known Tony, I don't know, mid 80s or something like that. We met in Mexico. So, Tony has a huge history in the intersection of music and art and global campaigns, beginning with the Glastonbury Festival, which he created when he was a mere kid. Tony went on to produce nine of the most watched global campaigns in the world, including the two Nelson Mandela concerts, The Wall, Life in Berlin, my favorite one, which is the Great Music Experience. And today, Tony is producing Listen, which is a global campaign to benefit or to help 1 billion vulnerable and disadvantaged kids around the world. So, Tony, really, thank you very much for taking some time from your really busy schedule to join us. So, let's start with what I asked everybody. And this is not the typical thing that you realize is happening when it's happening. It's always at the end, like you say, wow, that was a moment that really changed everything. So, what was that defining moment professionally for you?
Well, that was producing the Nelson Mandela 70th birthday tribute in 1988. It was an 11.5 hour broadcast that was taken by 100 countries, involved 83 mainly musicians and some film stars. Um, and it reached 600 million, we understood at the end of the year, 600 million people when there were only 5 billion in the world. So an enormous percentage. And when I mean reach, I don't mean TikTok reach, I mean long form reach. They're watching for 4, 5, 6, maybe even 11.5 hours and things. So an enormous reach, but it was a massive sort of global broadcast event in a campaign. But the campaign I put together after Miriam Makeba, who was the goddess of African song, had challenged me to do something about apartheid in South Africa. And my research had shown me that two things. One, first of all, that everyone agreed that getting Nelson Mandela out of prison was the key to ending apartheid. The second thing was that 50% of all radio and television news across the world reported Mandela as a black terrorist leader. I'm talking about 1987 now. Now, they took two forms. First is that the anchor person on the TV or radio station said Nelson Mandela, the black terrorist leader, or when they were interviewing people like Thatcher, like Reagan, like the Chancellor of Germany, and they called him a terrorist, the interviewer didn't challenge it. Now, if someone is being called a black terrorist leader, it's very, very difficult to get them out of prison. If they're called black leader, it's not so difficult to get them out of prison. So we had to find a campaign that would remove almost surgically one word from the news. How do you do it? So we used a Trojan horse methodology. We created a musical tribute to Nelson Mandela on his 70th birthday, and we sold it into the entertainment divisions of broadcasters. And we promised them that it would be music wall to wall, and that it wouldn't have speeches within it. What we were giving them didn't have speeches within it. And the reason we did that is under their license conditions, they couldn't back a political cause, and either supporting or going against apartheid then was judged not a humanitarian issue, but a political issue. So if we gave them music, music apparently isn't politics. So wall to wall music worked. Now, what was the Trojan horse? The Trojan horse was this. I'd sell it to the entertainment divisions of broadcasters, say some 6 months beforehand. And in the next month or two, they'd go home, they'd watch their news on their channel and realize that their news on their channel was still calling him a terrorist. They were contracted to us. The news wasn't contracted to anyone to call him a terrorist. So the news had to change. And months before that global broadcast event, but because of the global broadcast event, months before, he became a black leader. And then he was the only person in history that's had his 70th birthday tribute or birthday party watched by 600 million across the world. That changed my life.
No kidding. That changed everybody. That changed the lives of many, many, many people.
Mm.
I mean, if you think about it, the whole liberation of Nelson Mandela has basically changed South Africa to today.
Sure.
So it was earth shaking. So you've seen a lot. I mean, like we've had stories where you told me about, like running in the roof and in the concerts, trying to escape the cops that were trying to shut it down. Huge amounts of change in your industry. Um, what was the one change that you would have never expected, like in 1,000 years? What
Yeah,
changed
yeah,
tremendously?
yeah. So what I didn't expect to change is that broadcast and network television would walk away from music wholesale by the time you sort of get to the late 90s. And the first reason for that was that MTV, VH1, and other music channels across the world had just started. They were dedicated cable channels just for that, and so they'd drawn any audience for music straight to their channels, and therefore the networks weren't interested in doing what they'd done before, which was, the 1 hour special on Elton John or the 1 hour special on George Michael or whatever. They were no longer interested in that because the audience had been taken into the cable channels. And the second thing that then knocked the music on television, the music and networks and broadcasters in a big way, was really at the same time the enormous rise in the quantity of programming dedicated to sports. And in a way, because of that, what went on is a sort of a diminishing importance culturally to the place of music compared with sports. It's sort of de facto. It's demonstrated by the number of hours you get, a number of people that are watching these programs and things. So I didn't ever expect that. But that made a big change to what I was doing, because a significant part of my entertainment campaigns for causes was music.
Yeah, and I had that fight. By the way, the "I Want My MTV" campaign is my favorite campaign from all times. I thought it was brilliant. It forced the cable industry to take on the channels, and I mean, it just changed the industry. But I had that fight a lot because yes, ESPN was created more or less around the time that I became an international media director, and my fight was always no, sports is not the only way to reach men. Some of us never watch sports. Some of us actually like music,
Mm,
and you need to reach us in music. It is not, given that men are reached by sports.
mm,
So yeah, I totally see it. So
mm.
of course, the next question is, you still make your living out of it. So it changes. How did you cope?
Well, so
What did
I,
you do?
I was lucky. I was forced into a change as this was happening at the early stages. I was producing something that I eventually pulled off called Guitar Legends, which was a series of five
Oh,
guitarists for 5 nights down in Seville. But it was actually a campaign to reposition Expo 92. Expo 92 had been built in Spain. It was a really big expo, and the government had invested very heavily in it. And all the reports running up to it in the years beforehand were about the building of these beautiful pavilions, the rerouting of the river, the building of the train line down. It sounded like a civil engineering project to the world, and no one was buying tickets to go. So they turned to me and said, "Can you put something on in our site 6 months before we open our gates that repositions us entirely as an entertainment destination?" So I created the idea of Guitar Legends. We produced that, and I pulled in as one of my partners on that Spanish television, and they were to provide, I think, about 40% of the funding of the project. And one time on a trip to Madrid, all the executives looked really, really sad. I couldn't work out what it was, and eventually they got up the nerve to tell me, "Tony, the whole of the station has run out of cash." And so we were months away from this event. They had no cash. They couldn't keep the funding side that they were meant to contribute. So I scratched my head and said, what? They said, "Can we give you production?" I said, "Well, I've just signed a big deal with Panasonic on their new digital technology. No, we don't need any production. What else have you got?" And they said, "Ads. We got ad spots, television and radio ad spots." So I did a deal whereby they contributed this, an equivalent worth plus a bit, I think, but in ad spots. And I then put the ad spots of radio and television, created a campaign, and put them with the other rights that I had to content, to hospitality, running promotions, and created a 360-degree package, a turnkey package for sponsors. And I went around and sold it. And the biggest buyer of that was Coca-Cola. And so I realized at the end of this, I went, wow, I think we've got 4 times as much money out of selling sponsorship packages. They're more difficult to put together, but 4 times as much money as we would have done selling the rights to television, selling the rights to radio separately, selling the rights to sponsorship separately. So I said after that one, which was in 1992, from here on in, I barter all my content into the broadcasters, which of course for broadcasters is a good deal because there's no risk. So they're paying us in spots, and we put the spots in sponsorship packages, and we market those across the world.
Yeah, and basically you rediscovered the way to sell it. So, and a lot of people are following that today. You see many, 360 campaigns, and actually Cannes, for the first time some years ago, had the Titanium Award, which was for a fully integrated campaign. So
Mm.
that was also groundbreaking.
Mm.
So, of course, we live in the present, all of us. I mean, it is what it is. And I love it. I hate the fake nostalgia of, when I was a kid. I love living in 2024. I'm looking forward to 2025. So tell me more about Listen and what's in store for 2025. It's going to be an interesting year for you.
Yeah. So the Listen campaign is a campaign to be annual and global. So it's built to repeat. So it's got deep, deep foundations. And what we're trying to do in this campaign is bring the world's attention to the fact that we now have 1 billion very vulnerable, very disadvantaged children in the world. That's 1/8 of all people. That's 2/5 of all kids are very vulnerable or disadvantaged children. Even in the States, you've got 1 in 5 kids that are in difficulties and things. In some other countries, it's obviously 4 out of 5 or whatever. But, it's overall, it's 2 out of 5 kids across the world are in really difficult situations. And we're baking into our future their problems, and into obviously their future their problems as well. Now, it seems to us to be a communications problem, and we're creating an annual and global media campaign to communicate, to illuminate the problems these kids have, but very, very importantly, make the campaign positive, celebrate proven, scalable, replicable solutions to those problems as well. And we're going to use 80 stars and creative artists to help us do that, that are known everywhere in the world, and then add 20 to customize the campaign for India, for the Middle East, for Sub-Saharan Africa and Latin America, and in future years add other territories on to the customization as well. But it should produce 434, according to IPG's calculations, $434 million worth of communications. That's just the bits, not the music, not the art, not the novelists, but the bits in which you're saying, here's the problem, here's the solution. What the charitable sector would call advocacy. It should produce 434 million per year of that advocacy, celebrating solutions to these kids' problems. It should generate an online community, and it should raise approximately $100 million per year from the public responding to the campaign to give out as grants to children's charity projects around the world.
And actually, let's take a second or two, or a minute or two, or something like that, because one of the things that really attracted me to the Listen campaign is most of the time when you see celebrities being used in advertising, it's like, I don't know, Shaq selling a grill, or George Foreman selling a grill, or whatever. Like they're there, or even worse, like they put a celebrity face and then they put something else, and you are supposed to say, oh well, maybe the celebrity uses this, but you have found a hugely innovative way to actually integrate celebrities, stars into the fabric of Listen. So tell us more about it.
Yeah, so film stars are going on location to be filmed, which they're very good at, be filmed listening to these vulnerable and disadvantaged children. Not to talk for them, but to be the proxy audience and go on location and listen to them, to actually listen to them talk about the problems that they have and the projects that are helping them through that problem, the children's charity projects that help them through them. That's what the film stars are doing. Then they come back and help us present all those films in the global campaign. Musicians are creating beautiful bits of new music for us, but classic songs we already know, but in duets and trios and new
Hmm.
arrangements of classic songs that provide some of the musical entertainment within the campaign. Film novelists are writing short stories about vulnerable and disadvantaged children, and visual artists are creating art about it all. But it all gets woven together in a campaign that it goes on for 52 weeks a year, but for 13 weeks it's really intense. It has 100 2-minute news and social media items, 17 5-minute films,
Wow.
a feature documentary, and a global fundraising broadcast that in some countries is 7 hours long, in other countries it's five, etc. But it's a big campaign. There's lots of media in it, and there's lots of big media partners involved.
Yeah, so 2025 is going to be, like, wow, it's going to be amazing to see all of that together. So, one final thing, as you know, I'm, 100% against ageism, and I combat it very aggressively. So, excluding swear words, which is what I would use, if you were talking to a CEO or CMO, like the process of hiring people, and they got, several candidates, what would you say to a CEO or CMO about, older candidates?
Well, so I think one of the big differences is that we know that the world is full of bumps. It's full of changes. In the venture capital industry, you call them black swan events as well. You know, these massive changes that
Uh,
come around the corner. And what the younger people don't have is the experience of things going wrong. And quite often the older people have been through a few wars. And so they actually know how to manage things when things are starting to change, go wrong. Not necessarily that you're doing anything wrong, but the environment in which you're working has changed, whatever, and you're then in difficulties. And I think older people have, because of their experience, that they have a way of standing back from all of this and sort of working through it, working out how you take. What one guy said to me when I was studying as a student, he was a professor in management and things. He said, Tony, in a crisis, you have to look at what you've got in your hand. Do not concentrate on how it got there. Just go, what have I got in my hand? What have I got in my hand and what can I do with it? Don't get involved in this went wrong and that way. But, that was one of the wisest things people said. I didn't really know how important that was until I got to about 50.
I bet, and that's a good point. Like, never mind how did I get here, which is, of course, the great song by the Talking Heads.
Yeah.
You know, but yeah, what do I do with
What
this?
do I
Which
do with it? Yeah,
is,
exactly. What can I do?
yeah,
You know,
what I tell everybody.
yeah. And it's quite hard in situations to emotionally detach yourself from how you got there, which may involve a lot of people, you've been cross with a lot of people. Forget it. What have you got? What can you do?
Right.
And
So no, that's great. Well, thank you very much for joining us for one take.
well,
I really appreciate it. I hope to see you in one of the trips if you can make like a stopover. So,
yeah,
and if not, we'll definitely keep in touch.
lovely. Thank you very much. Lovely to talk to you.
Well, thank you very much. Bye bye.
Bye.